Let's keep this short. I'm not even sure if I'm going to post this. I just want to, I don't know if it's getting off my head is the right thing. Just talking about the future of the computer and the interface. I mean, it's something that is interwoven in pretty much every one of my videos. And this is probably something that I have said multiple times, but every time I get a taste of it or keep having a discussion, I'll tell you what, today this came about because I started seeing more rumors on the iPad. Well, there's a few things actually that prompted this kind of brainstorm today. One was the rumors of the foldable or all-screen MacBook versus iPad, and based on who you ask or based on which rumors you speak to, whether it's Mark Gurman or there was another one that was quite big in this. They've been changing their minds back and forth, but the argument was, is it going to be a foldable MacBook or is it a foldable iPad? Is it a full screen iPad that just folds, or is it a MacBook that normally is like a clamshell mode, but instead of a physical keyboard and a trackpad, the screen comes all the is the entire thing, and it's just going to be a foldable. Now the argument is just whether it's going to run macOS or iPadOS. And what has always struck me for the past decade is this idea that we're still developing these products when we know there's a new way forward. Now, obviously, it makes sense why you have to do it, because at the end of the day, you cannot predict, or it's very hard to predict what is the next thing, or when it's going to come about, or how it's going to come about. There are companies that are better at this. There are companies that are not as good as this. We know augmented reality, been in it for more than a decade. The answer is it's always coming in 2 years. Even Apple, with all their money, all the billions they poured into it, there's still fundamental laws of physics that we can't break yet, or our technology has not progressed to that point where we can fit what we need to in these small constraints. But what's always been interesting is that the thought that the operating system is going to be the same, how that's just kept going. Like the Vision Pro, the big use case that people like out of it, because at the end of the day there's not many apps that are developed for it, is just the multi-screens, the visualization, the virtualization of all the screens. And it's interesting because that's where we are. We understand what we understand. But there's this breed of computers, this breed of this new interface that, I know today I'm just coining, well, I had a phrase, I was calling it look and see, or something like that. I was just thinking about today how I'd call it, show and tell. I think that was the term I was using back in school. This is what we would use when we would come and bring something to school and show all our friends. They have a different name for it nowadays. But this concept has kind of been like the underlying current of everything that, of all the ways I've seen the interfaces or discussed computers, whether it's augmented reality, AI built into that, this idea that we're going to have this conversational AI, this whole idea comes into this show and tell mentality. And this really, I think what I'm talking about is the idea of like tools improving and completely changing. And I think that most people are not ready for that, because we're still discussing whether computers are still going to have trackpads or screens. We're still in this 2D interface. As much as some big companies really tried to move us forward, there's still a huge mentality that the computer of today is going to be the same as it's always been. It's just going to maybe look a little cooler. Now, there's lots of rumors that we can just talk about, and lots of things in the news. The idea of like iOS 19 getting complete redesign, taking cues from Vision Pro, the idea of macOS also getting a big redesign this year. There's this whole talk of this spatiality, or really spatial computing, this idea of the operating system kind of moving back, of like the opposite of skeuomorphism, or kind of bringing it back in a way like we took inspiration from the real world and brought into the digital world into a flat 2D interface, and now we're trying to kind of recreate a 3D world in there, because that's what we're going to be going to with augmented reality. But all these things are what I find fascinating is that even when we speak about these ideas, we're still trying to redo a 2D interface, and especially tools. Let's talk about tools. people are used to this idea of tools as like all the applications, whether it's 3D modeling, whether it's creating video editing, whether it's creating coding, any of the high-end things that we create with, these applications that we create with, they kind of follow this idea of like, there's toolbars, there might be like keyboard shortcuts, there's menus, there's different, we have to learn the language of the application, and the application over the decades have been designed in such a way that we get access to the features that it has given us. And I've given another talk, like one of these other brain streams, where I give this idea of like that the interface is going to be fluid. It's going to be not just contextual. It'll actually be built for every user. So instead of us like personalizing or moving around, but having the same interface, fundamentally the apps are going to be built for us and how we're going to, built for the individual on the fly of how we're using them. But I think something much bigger is happening, and you're starting to see it if you play with some of the new LLMs, or the idea of like generative AI, whether it's images, videos, or text coding, things like that. You're starting to see that there is some things that before were very, very difficult are becoming incredibly simple with just Word. Where again, and I talk about this idea of like, we're coming back to the command line interface of computers, but we're so much more powerful, and we're going off in a very, very different direction. And so I'm calling this direction, or I just coined it today, show and tell. And this idea that, actually, this reminds me of a conversation I had with a friend of mine back in the meta days. He was actually a Hollywood designer building, his name is Jace, building fictional or fantastical user interfaces for Marvel movies, Star Trek, Iron Man, all these different types of things. I remember we were talking about like the tools, and he was like, I've come to a point where it doesn't really matter what VFX tool I'm using. I've gotten so good at it that the complexity has melted away, and I'm just able to do what I need to do. It's kind of like a musician. When you get to a certain point and you learn a tool so well, the complexities of learning what each tooltip, what each feature, what each icon, menu item, these all blend away, and the tool just allows you to just create. You don't have to worry about learning that. And today that has been a very, very huge barrier for a lot of people to be able to become creative, or to even build things, not even necessarily creatively, but building things, is learning those applications that help you build these things. And what's happening nowadays, and another part of what is not influencing, but giving inspiration for this brainstream, is I was playing with Google's AI Studio, and I was playing with their new Gemini 2.0. Was it Flash? Yeah, the image generation. And the idea of like how easy it is to be able to create with a prompt. And when we realize that prompt text is just the slower way of telling something, this creation, there's a whole biblical thing that I would like to bring in, but I'm going to the idea that the world was bought or created with words, and I think we're coming back to that. But I think that's a very big thing. The power that we're able to do, we're able to now create things that before, okay, you're seeing that flash because I'm getting a call. Let me just, should I stop it at 10 minutes? Yeah, let me stop it at 10 minutes. Okay, show and tell. This is going to be the next leap forward. This is where applications are going. We're going to move away from these type of very constrained application and going to an area where we're actually going to be explaining and having a conversation of what we want. That's the tell part. The show part is, obviously, we're going to show inspiration or show things. We're going to be able to input different types of media, right? Multimodal. But then when we get back, we'll be able to have that conversation. We'll be able to draw up on it. Show and tell is going to be a very big thing where we're actually going to be co-creating with our computers. That's also how applications are going to work. I'm going to stop it at the 10-minute mark, and we'll continue this another day. I'll see you guys in the future.